Well, hello and welcome to this special year-end on business in the year 2014. A lot of things happen in this year, whether it's the big plunge in the crude oil prices or the fact that the Indian stock markets witnessing a rally of sorts and also other big events. We're going to discuss all those events, what were the big stories, what were the big highlights, whether it's global or domestic, whether it's the big fall in the Russian ruble or the pickup in the US markets. But before that, let me introduce my guest, Shishir Sinha, a leading economic journalist and who has described himself as who became a journalist by chance, but also enjoys boring policy reporting on his blog. And we'll also be joined by our guest, Priya Mahatne from Mumbai. But before that, we have put a list of the top 5 global events and top 10 Indian events, which we will have on the screen here. These in front of you are the top global events: the Russian economic crisis, WTO's global trade deal, global slowdown, whether it's Japan or China or Europe, EU or the European Union, where the growth hasn't picked up, or the limping back of the US economy. Remember, the US economy has reported its best growth number of 5% in almost a decade, or the big plunge in the crude oil prices. Those are the top 5 picks. We have uploaded that on our Twitter handle, that's @DD News Live, and you can go and put your comments, or you can also give other major lead. Now we will have the top Indian or local news which in a sense affected all of us. The top Indian, that on your screen, the GST bill in the parliament. Remember, the finance minister described as the biggest tax in a sense reform measure in almost 50 years. Of course, the planning commission being scrapped from the ramparts of the Red Fort on Independence Day by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, or the emergence of e-commerce. Remember, Flipkarts and eBays and Alibabas of the world dominated the headlines in the year, or that big court decision scrapping almost more than 200 coal blocks since 1993. And of course, the big bull run in the markets. Remember, the markets have touched all-time high in this year. Many experts and analysts are describing it as mother of all rallies. And remember, the Sensex has almost gained 6,000 points in this year. It's the year started with around 19,000 level and is currently trading at 27,000, touching a higher 28,000. And of course, reforms through ordinance, insurance, coal and land acquisition towards the end of this year. Now we will have the second plate, the other top business events. Remember, we have uploaded all those events on our Twitter page, where you can obviously put our comments. There you have is the aviation saga. Remember, aviation industry has witnessed lots of news, whether there are 2 new airlines, Vistara or Air Asia, or the big trouble in the jet. SpiceJet, of course, remember, the stock has almost tanked, and when you see or look at Jet Airways stock, it has gained quite. And of course, the number of policy measures announced by the government of India, whether it's Jan Dhan Yojana, Make in India or Digital India. And of course, Infosys naming Vishal Sikka as its first external CEO. And of course, production of ambassador cars coming to a halt. Quintessential government. It used to, in a sense, epitomize government of India, but of course, that is long past. But this car coming, this production of this car coming to a halt. So those were top business events, and of course, we have uploaded it on our Twitter handle. You can go there and of course put your comments, and of course tell us what in your thought are the biggest events of this year, biggest economic event. But let me start with Shishir. Shishir, tell me what in your view is the biggest economic event of this year domestically.
Domestically, I would prefer all the big policy announcement, be it Make in India, Digital India, or Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, or Clean Mission, or even Sushashan Divas. These events have almost trying to bring a kind of confidence in Indian economy. The problem with investors, whether it is local one or the international one, the biggest problem is they don't have that kind of confidence which force them to put money here. So these events, these various announcements are giving them a kind of confidence. The second initiative I would list as the issue of ordinances, promulgation of ordinance, be it insurance, be it land or any other ordinance. What is happening that investor may not be very sure about that what will happen when these will go to parliament, whether Rajya Sabha or Lok Sabha will pass it or not. But it is giving a kind of impression that government is really determined to push reform. So these two, the number of initiatives, number of programs and number of ordinances, if you combine all these, I mean initiatives and ordinances, that will give a kind of confidence that will really boost the sentiment. And of course 2014-15 we may not see the kind of growth which we had in 2006-7 or 2008-9 when we were having 8.3 or 8.5 or even 9%. But 2015-16 will have a much higher growth in comparison to 2014-15.
But the year 2014 was in a sense landmark because we saw this optimism in the Indian economy after like 2 years of in a sense bad news coming in, growth below 5%, and of course we saw the first quarter growth above that crucial 5% level. So India in a sense emerged as a positive news, also given the fact that the global economy is not doing so well. So that this was a year of India's economy limping back to normalcy.
India is now buzzword among all the global investors, whether you talk about US investor, whether you talk about European investors, and whether you talk about also some other economies like Singapore or Malaysia or Hong Kong or even Indonesia. Now people are more and more interested in India because they are just hoping that things will suddenly start going up and up. They are not seeing the kind of, I mean, apprehension. They are not looking for any apprehensions. They are looking only for positivity, and they are thinking that they will get good return on their money. The stock market has shown that. I mean, as you mentioned, that 6,000 points increase in Sensex over the year. That is one sign where every investor, every FII, every portfolio investor would love to come to India to put their money and get good return on their money.
So lots of things happen whether locally or globally, but let's take a look at what are the major headlines across the world in the global economic news segment here.
2014 will be the year which international economy would like to forget. The world economy saw big jolts and except a partial recovery in the American economy and green shoots of recovery in India, the global economy from Europe to Russia, from China to Africa suffered problems. American economy seems out of wood, but still the Fed Chair Janet Yellen won't tinker with interest rates. And in her year-end press conference, she gave investors an early Christmas gift by emphasizing on patient approach to increasing rates as the economy continues to improve.
As progress in achieving maximum employment and 2% inflation continues, at some point it will become appropriate to begin reducing policy accommodation. But based on its current outlook, the committee judges that it can be patient in doing so.
For now, investors expect a gradual increase in interest rates starting mid-2015. Meanwhile, the year was a good one for US markets, with S&P 500 and Nasdaq hitting multi-year highs. But across the Atlantic, it was not a good year. Eurozone remained in the mess it was. Italy entered into recession with France and Germany teetering on the brink of it. The European Central Bank gave hints of a new stimulus plan but never did announce it, and 2015 can be the year when concrete plan can be taken up. Greece looked to be emerging from the recession, but then it called for a snap elections, sending Greek stock markets crashing in early December. And then came Russia, now being referred as the sick man of Europe. It was a perfect storm for the country as fall in oil prices, its major export, and the Ukrainian crisis put the economy of the country on a downward trajectory. The Ukrainian crisis was triggered by the collapse of the government of Ukraine's pro-Russia president Viktor Yanukovych. He resigned from the office in February and fled the country in wake of protests that began over his decision of not signing a much anticipated trade deal with the EU. As the crisis became global, Russia was put under sanctions by Western countries, leaving its economy in shambles and its currency, the ruble, in big trouble. The ruble collapsed by around 45% against the dollar this year and at one point was trading at 79 per dollar. From Russia to China, the world's second largest economy, things weren't bright here too. The brakes came down on China's manufacturing engine. The HSBC Market Manufacturing Flash PMI for December shrank to 49.5, the lowest level in 7 months, under that 50 line that separates expansion from contraction. This came on the heels of a slew of November data which shows a weak factory output and investment growth at a nearly 13-year low. At an annual economic meeting in early December to draw up the blueprint for next year, China's leader said that monetary policy will not be kept either too tight or too loose, but there's a silver lining also. China's benchmark stock market, the Shanghai Composite Index, posted gains of more than 30% this year. And China's neighbor and the world's third largest economy, Japan, was dominated by Abenomics, a word to denote economic policies of Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe scored a big election victory in snap elections and got a fresh mandate to overcome deflation with Abenomics. But remember, 2014 was the year when Japan officially entered into recession, and Prime Minister Shinzo Abe will have to do a lot of work to shore up the economy. Only bright spot in Asia was India. With victory of Narendra Modi in the general elections, many now believe that the Asian elephant is on the path of recovery and growth.
मैं नरेंद्र दामोदर दास मोदी ईश्वर की शपथ लेता हूं कि मैं विधि द्वारा स्थापित भारत के संविधान के प्रति सच्ची श्रद्धा और निष्ठा रखूंगा.
But perhaps the biggest news of 2014 was the big fall in oil prices. Back in July, oil cost over $100 a barrel, but by December 2014, that barrel cost just $60. Oil prices have dropped in part because supply is increasing, the advent of hydraulic fracturing has sent US oil production soaring, Libyan oil has come back online, and OPEC can't agree on production cuts. Low prices is great news for consumers and importing countries, but low oil prices are bad news for oil producers. They make less money, and if prices fall further, they can even lose money. It may be known as black gold, but at this moment, this vital commodity is losing its shine. It's the economies of oil-producing countries from Iran to Nigeria, Saudi Arabia and Venezuela which are getting affected. In Venezuela, the president and other government officials are taking salary cuts as part of budget reductions in response to low prices of oil. The South American member of OPEC derives 96% of its export revenue from oil. On to Africa. Africa is also being battered as the oil prices fall. The devaluation of Nigeria's naira knocked $40 billion off the value of its economy. Nigeria and Angola could even be pushed to call on the International Monetary Fund for assistance if oil prices fall further. And there are more worries also. Ebola. According to the World Bank, Ebola is costing 3 West African countries worst hit by the outbreak more than $2 billion. The bank has cut its 2014 growth forecast for Liberia, Sierra Leone and Guinea and predicted only Liberia's economy will expand next year as investors flee, construction projects get halted and agriculture production dips. But there was some good news also. World Trade Organization or WTO clinched its first global trade deal in its history. The agreement means that WTO will introduce new standards for custom checks and border procedures. The deal will streamline the flow of trade that will add as much as $1 trillion and 21 million jobs to the world economy. The deal came after the big Indo-US deal which resolved their differences over public stockpiling of food. SIDHANT, SIBAL, DD News, New Delhi.
So that was what happened in the world of global economics. And Shishir, my first question, of course, a general one regarding the global economy is what, in your sense, is the top big event of the year 2014? My favorite, in a sense, is the plunge in the oil prices because nobody predicted it to happen from $100 to $60. But what's yours?
See, oil prices going down, it may be good news, but there are some apprehensions. Why OPEC is not deciding to cut the production? When we see prices dropping, international prices dropping, what was the reason? US started shale gas production. Now the OPEC has a strategy. OPEC doesn't want that US shale market should grow. So it wants to keep the price even below 60. You know, the cost of producing shale gas is almost 72 or 73. So if the crude prices is at say 57 and shale prices is at 72, the shale market will not grow, the crude prices market will grow, and that's the OPEC strategy. So if you are seeing some kind of downfall in international crude prices, it may be good news for the time being, but in future don't expect the same trend to continue. The other thing which you said, that what is the biggest development in 2014 at international level, I would say that Russian crisis, ruble crisis is going to give headache. Because 2008 US was in trouble, 2011 European countries were in trouble, 2014 Russia is in trouble. So almost after a gap of 3 years, we are seeing some kind of trouble.
But Russia might be in trouble, but there is one country which is growing, that's the US, and of course that's one of the reasons that the QE policy has been now stopped. We didn't saw that mad rush we saw in 2013, that big scare that the emerging markets will now crash, the markets will crash. We didn't saw that. And also, do you think 2015 will be the year when we'll see that big interest rate decision coming from the Fed?
When you say that we didn't see the kind of rush, I mean outflow, the credit should go to Fed Reserve, which didn't raise the interest rate. Had it happened, you would have seen Indian market going down like by anything. I don't think that US is going to increase the rate at least in next 3 to 6 months or even for the entire year, because they need money and they don't want that there should be a disturbance. So don't expect that kind of reaction from Fed Reserve. So at least in the first half of 2015, you won't see foreign fund outflowing from India. Rather than you will see more and more funds are coming into India because China has slowed down. There is not much development in Japan, almost it is in recession. In other emerging economy, be it Brazil, be it South Africa or any other emerging economy, we are not seeing that kind of growth. But India is growing, and that's a good sign which will give the result in first half of 2015. First half of 2015 means calendar 2015. So until June, we will see more and more inflow. After June, we may see some kind of correction in market.
And everyone is waiting for that big budget, because budget will be the big, in the sense,
and that will be the first budget. I mean,
of this
remember,
because last one is an interim
it will
one.
give a clear picture what the government wants to do, what kind of policy action it is going to take, what will be the broader reform picture. So that budget will reveal that.
But Shishir, when you see the global economy, it's not doing well except America and India. The entire globe is entering in kind of a slowdown. Japan entered into recession this year. China is not doing well. The data coming from the country is not so good. European Union is in a mess. It was in 2011, 12 and 13. So which is the way the entire global economy is heading towards?
See, this is an opportunity for India. What happened? We are not doing well on the international trade front, because sometimes we say that our costs are very high. We are not a kind of competitive, we are not going to provide a kind of competitive environment for our manufacturers. So that is why they are not in a position to compete with others. So this is an opportunity. When other countries are not doing well, when China is not doing well on manufacturing front, if Indian government gives a lot of concessions, a lot of benefit to the manufacturer, if it encourages the manufacturer and it reduces the cost just by land acquisition, Land Acquisition Act, changes in Land Acquisition Act is going to have a very good benefit, going to have very good impact on overall cost structure of Indian manufacturing industry. It will make it more and more competitive, and there we will be able to compete in the international market in a much bigger way. So it's an opportunity. When you see slowdown in international economy, it's an opportunity for India. So
opportunity for India and also opportunity for our economy. Well, let's take a look at how the Indian markets performed in the year 2014.
Was the year 2014 for the stock markets. Markets witnessed a fantastic bull run, resulting in best performance in the last 5 years. Investors' wealth hit 100 trillion rupees level for the first time in the history. Stock markets hit new peaks in 2014 on the hope of pro-business reforms by the new government led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Decline in the crude prices in the later half of the year also helped the bulls to reach to the new highs. Sensex rallied by nearly 30%. This is the highest annual gain since the year 2009, when the blue chip index had rallied by 7,817 points. Nifty also reflected the same mood and rallied by 30%. However, the mid-cap and small-cap space outperformed the indices and were up by 53% and 66% respectively. The major gainers on the charts for the year were led by Axis Bank, Maruti Suzuki, State Bank of India, ICICI Bank and Cipla, which were up by between 56 to 91%. However, some passive participation was seen in Tata Steel, Tata Power, Reliance and Wipro, which were down by 1 to 6%. Gainers on the charts in Group A were Gujarat Fluoro, Eicher Motor, Ashok Leyland, Bharat Forge and Aurobindo Pharma, which were up by between 185% to 225%. However, some selling pressure was seen in Bhushan Steel, Core Education, JP Associates, Jindal Steel and Reliance Communication, which were down by between 38% to 82%. Experts attribute the rally in stock markets during 2014 largely to the thumping mandate given in general elections to Narendra Modi-led government at the centre and the subsequent boost to the investor sentiments. Analysts also believe that the rally can also continue in 2015 and banking and infrastructure sector can play a crucial role in lifting the markets to new record highs. Business Desk, DD News.
So that was what happened in the Indian stock markets. And Shishir, do you think that this rally will continue? This is now being termed as the mother of all rallies. So this will continue because we saw some kind of correction in this month, but more or less positive news coming from the policy matters also, and of course this will give a boost to the markets.
It will continue for some time. I mean, at least in the first quarter, say January to March, it will continue. It all depends upon what kind of policy measures Fed Reserve is going to take. If it increases the interest rate, then money will start flowing out from India. That's the fear. We should be worried about that. And the other thing is that what kind of steps Japan and China are going to take. That will also determine whether Indian market will continue to witness rally or not. But at least for the next 3 months, I am optimistic that rally will continue.
And while we are talking, Shishir, the core data is out. The 8 core sector industry is registering a growth of 6.7% in November as against 3.2%. That's a great news for the Indian economy.
That's a really positive news. Now we should be thinking about that what will happen on the manufacturing front, because during April to October period, manufacturing sector had a negative growth, and especially in the month of October it had a negative growth of minus 7.6%. So we should be thinking, because when we talk about core sector, that consists of almost 39%, or if my figures are correct, 39% or 40% in total industrial production. So if the entire industrial production shows a positive sign in the month of November, that will be the real thing, and that will boost another rally in stock market.
But IIP numbers, the last IIP numbers weren't good. Do you think that that was just a minor blip, and the next set of IIP numbers will be a set of good numbers?
I'm sure it will be, because see, in the month of November and December, normally it's not very good for consumer durable, because we see rally in consumer durable market in the month of September and October during the festive season. So November, December may not be good for the consumer durable. But in terms of other sectors like capital good, like electricity, or other sectors like intermediate goods and all those, there we can see, and now various obstacles have been removed in terms of mining, in terms of power sector generation and all those things. So I'm sure that the month of November and December will give good numbers in terms of overall industrial production.
So optimistic about the IIP numbers. But let's go to another sector, the aviation sector. It was a mixed year for the aviation sector. Let's take a look at how the year planned for the sector, because there was a set of good news and bad news.
Missing planes, aviation disasters, safety downgrades, discount on air tickets, and financial stress on airline companies. 2014 was a year where the aviation sector, not only in India but also across the globe, suffered a stressful journey. The year began on a negative note as US Federal Aviation Administration downgraded India's aviation safety ranking from top category 1 to category 2 bringing it below Pakistan and on par with countries like Ghana, Barbados and Bangladesh on January 31st. Cash crunch hit SpiceJet triggered the first low-fare war, announcing almost 50% reduction in ticket prices, unleashing a series of such heavily discounted offers throughout the year to mop up cash for running the airline. However, after suffering a full closure for almost a day, SpiceJet averted a shutdown as it attracted new investment from one of its founders, Ajay Singh. It is expected that Ajay Singh will pump in $200 million to pick up stake from current promoter Kalanidhi Maran and his Sun Group. Jet Airways faced a series of losses and switched over to single brand business model, phasing out its low-cost subsidiary Jetline from early December. The two unexpected disasters saw the world come together in an unprecedented act of global solidarity when the world involved themselves in the search and rescue operations of the missing MH370 airplane and dealing with the aftermath of the MH17 crash. Unlike MH370, whose trail has been inconclusive, the debris of AirAsia QZ8501 was found near the area in the Java Sea, where it went missing on 28th of December. On the domestic front, there was no major mishap during the year. However, a SpiceJet flight carrying 140 passengers had a close shave when a buffalo came on the runway at the Surat airport and hit it, forcing the pilot to abort takeoff. This led aviation regulator DGCA to take preventive measures at 18 identified airports to prevent such recurrence. However, there was some good news as AirAsia's Indian subsidiary AirAsia India took off with its first flight on June 12th, making it the fourth Indian budget carrier after Indigo, SpiceJet and Go Air. Tata Singapore Airlines joint venture carrier Vistara received the flying permit and announced its intentions to start operations from January 9th. On the other side, Jet Airways completed transaction of 24% stake sale for 2,058 crore rupees and offloaded 51% holding to the Gulf carrier Etihad. The change in political leadership brought much hope for the aviation sector, which was for long seeking attention of decision makers to address issues like infrastructure, high taxes and costs. The industry's demand on curtailing taxes on jet fuel, which comprises 40 to 45% of an airline's operational costs, are yet to be addressed. However, analysts believe that the year 2015 can bring some relief to consumers, with new airlines set to enter the aviation market. Business Desk, DD News.
So a lot of things happened in the aviation sector, good news and bad news. Shishir, what happened in this aviation sector? Because at one moment we are looking at two new airlines, AirAsia and Vistara, but look at SpiceJet. I mean, the problems are just mounting, and many are now saying that SpiceJet may be the next Kingfisher.
Now, let me correct that. SpiceJet is not going to be the next Kingfisher. The way things are being managed at SpiceJet label, I don't think SpiceJet is going to have the same story as we saw in sense of Kingfisher. Now, when we talk about two new airlines, Vistara and AirAsia, they are going to intensify the competition in the sky. And the biggest gainer would be Indigo. Because the Indigo, the kind of reach they have, the kind of fleet they have, and the kind of business model they have, they will be the biggest beneficiary. Because you must understand, Indian consumer is more concerned about the prices rather than the facilities. He wants to reach the destination on time. And if you maintain these two things, price as well as on-time performance, that will really help. You may say that Indigo is not going to sell you ticket at a cheaper price. The tickets are very costly, especially on Indigo flights. But still, I believe that Indigo is going to gain much. The Vistara and AirAsia, they will have a really tough time because of the various other issues like aviation turbine fuel issue, the taxes on aviation turbine fuel issue. Until and unless most of the states are reducing taxes on aviation turbine fuel, the real benefit of lower crude prices, that will not reach to the airlines. And if it doesn't reach, the consumer will not benefit.
So a lot of things happening in the year 2015 for the aviation sector. Let's go to Bombay, where Priya Mahatne is there. Well, welcome to this special discussion on how was the year 2014 for business. Well, Priya, just taking your opinion, what do you think was the lead headline for the year 2014 when it comes to business?
You can take the...
Pia, can you hear me, Pia? Pia, if you can hear me, I'll repeat my question. My question is, what in your sense is the big headline, big item for the year 2014 when it comes to business? Pia, can you hear me? We think we have lost Pia, but Shishir, we were talking about the aviation sector. How do you think that this sector will pan out in the year 2015. Vistara will be starting its journey from 9th. And of course, problems with SpiceJet. So how do you think? Will it be a mixed bag or some positive news will come in?
No, some positive news will come, because the kind of, see, most of the states are now going to be ruled by BJP. So if there are similar kind of political system in center as well as in state, it would be easy to reduce the taxes on ATF. If they do so, then the cost of ATF in total overall operational cost, which you said that almost 40 to 45%, it will come down. Globally, it is something around 20 to 30%. If it is at 30%, that will really help all the airlines, not just Vistara, SpiceJet, Indigo or Air India, but all the airlines which are in the business or which are planning to come into the business. So the good thing which is happening, the crude prices are coming down. And similarly, if states are ready to cut down taxes, that will help them. The second thing is that the competition is forcing all the airlines to improve their service. Now you cannot be very, I mean, a kind of, you can't be content with that what you are providing. Consumers have option. If you are not giving them good service, they will go to other airlines. And options, if options are available, then it would be very difficult for you to survive. So on the one hand, the cost of operation will come down. On the other hand, we will see changes in the service standard, and these two will really help the airlines industry to grow in 2015 and 2016.
Well, let's shift gear from aviation sector to the energy sector, because energy sector was one sector which saw a lot of news coming in, whether it's from Supreme Court or whether it's the power ministry, because we know a lot of reform measures were announced. So let's take a look how the year was for the energy sector.
Energy is one propellant that can give a desired push to economy if the government wants to hit double-digit growth rate. Be it manufacturing or agriculture, from infrastructure to aviation, energy can be an imperative element to sustain and prosper. The year bygone could be termed eventful for energy sector, for it saw major changes in both within and beyond the territorial boundaries of the country. Much touted gas pricing review faced high-level discussion and was halted in the backdrop of election code of conduct before the new regime took over and decided the fate of gas pricing. Modi government, after fresh consultation with various stakeholders, fixed the gas price at $5.2 per MMBTU. The increase was just 1/5 of the prevailing $4.2 per MMBTU and much below that what Rangarajan committee had suggested of $8.6 MMBTU. Fuel to power the generators of electricity continue to mar the sector. India sits on an installed capacity of more than 250,000 megawatt, but significant part of it remains idle due to fuel unavailability. The government has set a target of power for all by doubling electricity generation from 1 trillion units to 2 trillion units by 2019. Supreme Court order cancelling more than 200 coal blocks since 1993 came as a major blow to the industry. Government came with a rescue plan. Coal ordinance was promulgated by the president towards the end of the year. The ordinance also signals commercial mining for private players, though with riders to safeguard Coal India and labour interest. Electricity ordinance was brought to make generation scenario much to the choice of consumers. Government claimed it will increase transparency and competitiveness among distributors, of which the consumers could be the ultimate beneficiary. Prime Minister Narendra Modi called for greater focus on renewable energy. Government decided to revive the long-pending renewable energy bill in a bid to generate 1 lakh megawatt of renewable energy by 2019. The draft law provides for giving renewable energy credits that could be traded and are bankable for up to a year. From ratifying the additional protocols of the International Atomic Energy Agency to signing of the nuclear deal with Australia and agreements for building Units 3 and 4 for Kudankulam nuclear power plant with Russia, the nuclear energy sector saw steady progress in 2014. After hovering around $110 per barrel from late 2010 till mid-2014, oil prices fell suddenly and unexpectedly in the year's second half to reach below $60 per barrel by the year end. A price fall culminated in deregulation in diesel prices. The fall in crude came as a relief to Indian consumers, with petrol price being slashed by 12 rupees and diesel prices came down by 9 rupees. Government also encashed the opportunity by increasing excise on the deregulated commodities and expects to be richer by more than 10,000 crore rupees by the end of this fiscal. This will be lightening the burden on the current account deficit. Business Bureau, DD News.
So that was what happened in the year for energy sector. But let's go to Bombay again, where Pia Mahatme is waiting for us. Well, Pia, tell me what in your sense is the biggest headline story for the year 2014 when it comes to domestic economy?
Well, before I answer the question, I'd like to wish all the viewers of Doordarshan a Happy New Year. I think the biggest story is quite evident, and that is the election of Mr. Modi as Prime Minister, because that certainly instilled a certain sense of hope and optimism for the Indian economy. And over the last 6 months, we've seen a build-up of investor sentiment. We've seen India back on the map as among the most promising nations of the world. And as we head for the next year, definitely India would be among the biggest growth stories of the global economy.
So, biggest growth story of the global economy. But Pia, let's talk about the global economy also, because global economy saw lots of bad news. Japan entered into recession. Good news not coming from China either, and European Union remained in a mess. It was in the last year, like last year in 2013 and 2012. So, how do you think that for global economy that the year will pan out?
Well, I think that as you mentioned, certainly this has been a disappointing year for a number of countries because China finds itself in the midst of a slowdown. Japan has entered into a recession. Russia is on the brink of a rather difficult recession. And of course, the Eurozone continues to be plagued with a slowdown. But the interesting and positive aspect is the recovery of the US economy. And certainly the US economy is among the most important economies of the world, and the recovery of the US economy in the last quarter, in Q3, it has achieved a growth of 5%, and this certainly is promising. Of course, there still needs to be more employment in the US economy. The housing sector needs to be revived. But I think that that is among the most important aspects that we've seen in the global economy over the last year or so. Otherwise, yes, it is disappointing insofar as the growth rates of other nations are concerned.
Well, Pia, also even the financial capital Mumbai, we know it was a mother of all rallies for the markets. The Sensex surged almost 6,000 points. It started the year at 19,000 and it's now trading at 27,000. So, what's your view on the markets, the future, and do you think that there are more corrections ready to come in the markets, because December was 1 month which saw a lot of corrections. So, do you think that the correction will continue?
Oh yes, definitely. I think that this has been an exuberant phase over the last 3 to 4 months. The kind of rally we've seen in the stock exchange, certainly it has been an exuberant phase. But as you mentioned, corrections are inevitable. And the main correction that really has to take place is that certain reform measures would certainly correct the valuation. Certain stocks which are overvalued will get back to their correct values, and certain stocks which are undervalued will increase. So in that sense, yes, the correction is inevitable. And this correction will also take place over the next 3 to 4 months. Insofar as actual rally of the stock exchange is concerned, one thing that is clear is that over the last, I would say 6 months, we've seen a surge in FII inflows. Now, FII inflows by its inherent nature is volatile. And if you want a stable increase in stock indexes, perhaps not as tremendous, but a stable increase, you need a larger proportion of long-term investment inflows to come into the economy.
So, a lot of good news coming in, at least for the markets and the Indian economy. But 2014 will be the year of mergers and acquisition. Mergers and acquisition came back, roaring back this year with lots of news coming in that sector. Let's take a look in this report.
Mumbai-based multinational company Sun Pharmaceutical acquired Indian drug maker Ranbaxy for nearly $4 billion. Sun Pharma will acquire 100% of Ranbaxy in an all-stock transaction. Ranbaxy shareholders will get 4 shares of Sun Pharma for every 5 Ranbaxy shares held by them. The merger would create world's 5th largest specialty generic pharma company. Social networking giant Facebook acquired messaging app WhatsApp for over $19 billion. However, the final worth of this acquisition increased by an additional $3 billion, which upped the deal value to $21.8 billion. The deal was announced earlier this year and closed recently after the European Union regulators approved it for further proceedings. WhatsApp is Facebook's largest ever acquisition. WhatsApp has over 400 million users. The huge and most talked about takeover of the year, the 7-year-old Bangalore-based domestic e-retailer Flipkart acquired the online fashion portal Myntra in May 2014. According to tech pundits and experts, the deal was valued at about 2,000 crore rupees. Flipkart announced it will invest $100 million in Myntra over the next 12 to 18 months and said it hopes to become the country's largest fashion entity. Swiss drug maker Novartis and British pharma giant GlaxoSmithKline agreed to swap $20 billion in assets in what amounted to major restructurings for both firms. Novartis bought GlaxoSmithKline's cancer drug business while GSK took Novartis's vaccine business, and the companies agreed to combine their respective over-the-counter and consumer drug businesses. Holcim of Switzerland and Francis Lafarge unveiled a deal to create the world's biggest cement maker. Cement companies Holcim and Lafarge recently cleared a major hurdle toward their planned $46.8 billion merger after antitrust authorities in Europe said the deal could go ahead subject to significant asset sales across the region. The deal could be completed next year and will effectively shake up the cement industry around the world. German pharmaceutical and chemical giant Merck KGaA took over US-based Sigma Aldrich company for $17 billion in cash, hoping the deal will help boost its lab supplies business. Sigma is the leading supplier of organic chemicals and biochemicals to research labs and supplies groups like Pfizer and Novartis with lab substances. The acquisition expands Merck Millipore's global reach, increasing the company's presence in North America and adding exposure to fast-growing Asian markets. General Electric has got government approval for acquiring Alstom's energy assets globally for $17.1 billion, while Alstom will retain its rail transport business. The deal will give GE wider access to power plants in Asia and Africa, with Alstom getting a stronger footing in the US railroad business. In order to connect the world via internet, Google acquired a US-based startup, Titan Aerospace, earlier this year. Titan, which manufactures solar-powered unmanned aerial vehicles, said that the acquisition could help in providing internet connections in remote areas, which would give wings to Google's dream drone project. It came as a surprise to many when the news of Lenovo taking over Motorola was made official 2 years after Google acquired Motorola Mobility for $12.5 billion. The deal has been officially concluded and Lenovo will buy Motorola for $2.91 billion in a mixture of cash and stock. In the biggest takeover in the Indian media industry, Reliance Industries took over 78% shares in Network 18 in May 2014 for 4,000 crore rupees. Network 18 was founded by Raghav Bahel and includes websites like moneycontrol.com, firstpost.com, while TV18 group includes CNBC TV 18, CNN IBN, Colors, IBN 7 and CNBC Awaaz.
Well, that was a story by our correspondent Salvia on the mergers and acquisition. But now a common question to both Delhi and Bombay. Well, 2015 will be a year of optimism perhaps because the Indian economy has already started to show green shoots of recovery. Do you think that those green shoots of recovery will become trees of growth starting with Delhi?
Of course, and we will see some signal in the budget when the Finance Minister Arun Jaitley will present its first budget of UPA. I mean, first formal budget, I would say, not because last year he did present a budget. So, first formal budget of NDA government on 27th of February 2015. That will give a clear signal that what is going to happen, what will be government strategy to boost the growth.
And Pia, what's your view on that?
We see a recovery, but we have to be cautious because from now to the budget, it's going to be a fairly critical phase. We've seen the government moving rather quickly in this session of Parliament towards reform measures, and I think that with the budget, what we'll see is the road ahead. Now, two things that would really make a difference to the Indian economy. One is GST, and we see the timeline of that in 2016, and one, the insurance bill, because both of this will mobilize a certain amount, a considerable amount of capital that is badly required for investment.
And also, we are talking about the Indian economy, a source of pride, given the fact that the global economy is not doing so well. But of course, there are some hiccups also. Do you see some hiccups in the year 2015? Shishir, we know that fiscal deficit numbers aren't looking so good. So, do you think that fiscal deficit number can create some problem?
Of course, because just today the fiscal deficit numbers have been released, and it shows that 98.9% of budget estimate, that budget estimate was 5,35,000 crore, and we have already crossed 5,25,000 crore. What does this mean? This means that there will be a lot of cut, especially on plan expenditure side. Last year we saw 76,000 crore of worth of cut, especially in the plan expenditure. This year we may see similar kind of cut in the plan expenditure. This means that the developmental expenditure by the government will come down, and that's not a good sign. That's the one thing we need to be cautious about that.
Well, Pia, last question to you. What are the major hiccups you see for the Indian economy in the year 2015? Things which the government should, in a sense, tread cautiously.
Well, I think the major hiccup and also the major imperative is to revive the infrastructure sector, because the infrastructure sector, as we all know, has the maximum number of linkages with the rest of the economy, and with so many projects stalled for a variety of reasons. According to the midterm review that was recently released, 180 lakh crores worth of projects, 60% of which are in the infrastructure sector, have been stalled. Even if a fraction of this are revived, certainly it would generate employment, it would improve investor sentiment, it would attract investment, and it would be a major impetus to the Indian economy.
Well, thank you so much, Pia, and have a great year ahead, and Happy New Year to you. Well, Shishir, continuing our discussion, this year also saw regulators, in a sense, showing their power, whether it's the Competition Commission of India or SEBI, with the SEBI almost coming up with 700 orders and 1,700 recovery cases. And when it comes to Competition Commission of India, big penal slaps against companies like DLF or other companies. How do you think that 2014 the year was? Do you think that emergence of regulatory these organizations showing their powers?
See, when we talk about corporate governance, it doesn't mean that just abiding company law. It also means that we have to follow various regulations, and there the role of these regulators, whether Competition Commission of India, whether SEBI or whether IRDA or any other regulator comes into picture. What we have seen, these regulators have got enough power. Like SEBI, what happened last year? I mean, of course, this year, because the year is yet to end. This year, we saw passage of one bill, and that bill, that act, has given enough power to SEBI to act against Ponzi schemes. The biggest problem with Indian people, the Indian community, that they are not getting good, a resource to park their money, to park their surplus money. And if Ponzi schemes are coming into picture, that will hurt their confidence, that will hurt their interest. So if SEBI is acting against these Ponzi companies, these illegal deposit scheme companies, that will give a confidence. And don't forget that our investment rate is, our saving rate is just 30%. We need to increase it. Earlier it used to be 36%, 38%. We need to increase it, because that's the kind of long-term money which we need for infrastructure sector. As Priya was saying, that forget about stock market where you have volatile FII investment. You need long-term money, and these Indian people can provide you long-term money, provided that they are given a proper regulatory infrastructure, proper regulatory environment. And I'm sure that not just SEBI or Competition Commission of India, but at various level, we will see more strong regulatory measures which will create a kind of confidence among Indian people.
So year of regulator for the Indian economy, but also year for technology. We saw big news coming in, whether it's Apple coming out with its new iPhones or Samsung, in a sense, taking a beating. Let's take a look what are the major headlines in the technology sector in the year 2014.
The year 2014 saw many great players in the world of tech gaining notoriety. In this year, mobile market was overhauled completely by big players like Samsung and Apple to new entrants from China like Xiaomi and Oppo. This year saw mobile launches in every segment for consumer needs. Let's begin with Samsung. Samsung's Galaxy 5S failed to attract people. The company also launched a Galaxy Note 4. But the year saw its dominance coming under question because of new players. Apple went for bigger and better mantra, launching iPhone 6 and 6 Plus. Apple also launched Apple Pay, which helps users to directly make transactions from Apple's devices. Google launched its new flagship Nexus 6. But what made headline was mid and lower budget smartphone market. Motorola launched its Moto X, G, Moto E in its platform. And it was the year of Chinese mobiles. Chinese mobile companies like Xiaomi and Oppo changed the traditional mobile selling strategy upside down. Using e-commerce and social sites to advertise and sell their mobile phones and tablets, they changed the rules set by big and settled companies. Chinese mobile maker Xiaomi, only using internet, sold as many as 1 million handsets, which includes the sale of their latest Mi 3, Redmi 1S and Redmi Note. Mi 3 before entering the market had made huge hype. Redmi 1S and Redmi Note followed the legacy of Mi 3, giving users experience which was good along with their low cost. This year also saw launch of smartwatches like Moto 360, Samsung Gear and Apple Watch, and also LG G Watch. And finally, about laptops and the desktop. Well, let's put it this way, their era is almost over with smartphones and smartwatches. The year 2014 was filled with innovations, and here's hoping that the year 2015 will bring more adventure to the technology sector. Business Bureau, DD News.
And as we approach the end of 2014, it's time when all the big tech firms are taking their annual look back at the year gone by. From general elections to Kashmir floods, the social media giant Facebook has revealed some of the most discussed topics on the platform over the past 12 months. Take a look.
As we are heading towards the end of 2014, social media giant Facebook takes a look back at the moments, places and people that moved us over the year. In its year review, Facebook said general elections, which was held in April-May, was the most discussed topic in India. Indian Premier League, World Cup, Mars Orbiter mission, Kashmir floods, mobile company Xiaomi's entry to India, in that order, were the most discussed topics on Facebook in India. The year in review 2014 has ranked Bollywood actress Alia Bhatt in the list of 10 most discussed topics. Mary Kom biopic followed Bhatt in ranking. The networking site has not only been used as a social networking platform by people to discuss over trending topics and sensitive issues, but has also brought the world closer by spreading awareness. 2014 witnessed people getting together to support a cause. Malaysia Airlines, whose MH370 mysteriously disappeared, also figures in the chart. Conflict in Gaza was another topic in the list. The site also stated that India Gate was the most checked in places during the year. It was followed by Taj Mahal, Gurudwara Bangla Sahib, Nandi Hills and others. Cookie Jam was the top global games in 2014, followed by Bubble Witch 2 saga, Candy Crush Soda saga. Globally, the World Cup in Brazil was the most talked about topic. That perhaps come as little surprise, given that Facebook had previously revealed the sporting extravaganza was the most talked about event in the platform's 10-year history. It was followed by Ebola outbreak, the Brazilian elections, Robin Williams, the Ice Bucket Challenge, Malaysia Airlines and the Sochi Winter Olympics in terms of conversation drivers were the most discussed topics globally.
Modi will become the leader of the world's largest...
New Media Desk, DD News.
So So that was all what happened on Facebook. But Shishir, briefly tell me one word to describe Indian economy in the year 2014.
Buzz.
Buzz.
It's creating buzz. It's creating excitement. So that's the only word which I can think about Indian economy. And at the end, I must wish all the viewers of Doordarshan a very happy new year and more money in their hand.
And the profitable year 2015. Well, that's all. That sums up all the business headlines for the year 2014. Meet you next year, and here's wishing all our viewers a happy and a profitable new year. But before we leave you with the images of the year 2014.